Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Mike and Will from Six Psyche. And we thought it'd be a good idea after our last two videos where we shared all 27 aquariums in both our homes with some of our cichlids getting to be really large, a good idea to share with you guys what we've been through over the past 2.5, 3 years. Will and I love this hobby for a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest ones is the community. And Will and I don't claim to be experts of any kind. We just like to share our journey in fish keeping with you all, hoping to get feedback that can only make us better. So with that said, let's get into today's video.
So the first topic we're going to cover is water changes. Water changes was especially important to me because, as you know from my video a couple weeks ago, I talked about how when I had my haps and peacocks in this tank sitting behind me, I noticed a drastic difference in the growth of my fish, the quality of the water in my tank, and just the overall look of my tank compared to Mike's 210-gallon hap and peacock. And after careful discussion and talking about going back and forth, I realized the thing that I was doing different from what Mike was doing, because our tanks are pretty much set up the same, was staying consistent with my water changes. Mike was changing his on a weekly basis, doing about a 50 to 60, anywhere from 50 to 60% water change, where I was doing mine irregularly, sometimes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes even a month, depending on my work schedule and how long I was gone. I wasn't consistent with it. So the one thing I did just to test myself out and test the theory was I started, regardless of when I was traveling or whatever, I stayed consistent weekly water change. That meant if I had to change it on a Wednesday, I didn't care that it broke my cycle to change it every Saturday. I made sure I changed it weekly, and as you can see behind me, this tank, even though it don't have haps and peacocks in it, it is just as beautiful and pristine as my brand new tank sitting over here, and it looks about the same. So for me, I will try to do my best to stay consistent with water changes, and what I found out by doing that, I have drastically improved the quality of my tanks. Fish are growing better, they're actually eating better, so it just overall helped it in my opinion.
Yeah, the overall health of the fish was better. The only thing that I would add to that is both Will and I have several tanks with several large cichlids, so understanding that we have large cichlids that dig and like to tear up the aquarium. Neither one of us have really gotten into the planted realm yet. Do understand that by adding planted tanks or by adding some pothos to the back of the tank, you can eliminate some nitrates. I did that in my 210-gallon peacock and hap aquarium, and it definitely does help. But having sufficient filtration is something that Will and I pride ourselves on as well. Definitely spend the money. It is a little bit costly, but it definitely pays off. And that's going to get us into our next topic of filtration. So what Will and I did, like I just said, Will and I definitely have invested into our filtration. But what we found is kind of like, a lot of people do, when you find something that works, you stick with it. So for us, under almost every single aquarium, you're going to find a Fluval canister of some kind, be it the FX series or the Fluval 407, 307, 207, any of those we pretty much stick with. And the reason why is if anything happens to one of those canister filters, the hoses are already set on the back of the aquarium. They're pretty easy to change out. They're all the pieces inside the filtration, they all fit the same, so it's just something that makes ease, and it's a convenient way for us to filter our aquariums. The second thing with our aquariums is both of us also, again, staying with one manufacturer, is we like the Seacom Tidal hang-on backs. So what you'll find on a lot of our aquariums, for purposes of skimming, for purposes of filter floss or chemical filtration, we've got a hang-on back on almost every single one of our aquariums. And another reason that we do that is in the event that any of these aquariums have sicknesses throughout the aquarium, what we find is by not putting the filter floss and the chemical filtration in our canisters, which are hard to get out of there, they're heavy, you gotta drain the water, you gotta do all these things to get into those filters. So what we found is you've got to change your filter floss and your chemical filtration most. So we put the chemical floss and the chemical filtration in our hang-on back filters. And that just makes it easier when we're trying to treat tanks. You just take the chemical filtration out, treat the tank as required, and then when you're done treating the tank, put the chemical filtration back in and you're good to go. The last piece I would add to that subject is pretty much at either the beginning or middle of every single day, I get up under every single one of my aquariums. I feel the top of the canister filters to make sure that they're all functioning the right way. Because when you're running aquariums that have sand and wave makers that are pushing, and you have fish that are digging and they're, disturbing the substrate, that substrate gets up into the into the intake and then down into your canister. And with Fluval, and I mean really any filter that gets sand in the impeller, it's going to create problems eventually. So just making sure that that's part of our daily routine is checking to make sure that all of them are functioning, not linky, because that could be a big problem as well. But those are just some of the things that we like to check for filtration.
So the other thing that helps with the quality of our tanks is the surface agitation. For surface agitation, we like to use wave makers, and we've done a lot of trial and error with this, where we've had multiple wave makers inside a tank, put one at the top on one side, put one at the bottom on it to help create the tunnel to move everything around. So we've done a lot of trial and error. We realized depending on, for our setups, depending on the substrate you have, that kind of dictated how many wave makers we put in there and the placement of them. So like in my African cichlid tank, my Lake Tanganyika tank, I have the crushed shell in there. So with that, because the wave makers aren't going to move them shells around, I have two wave makers in there, one at the top right, one at the bottom left, and it helps create that tunnel, and it keeps the flow of all the waste and anything like that flowing around, the bad food, wasted food. It helps rotate it around to ensure it's getting into the filter and getting processed the way it should. With some of these big tanks, as you can see, this one, my 150-gallon South American tank, it has all sand, that fine sand. So when I used to put the wave maker at the top corner, it would create the tunnel, but it would also blow all that sand. I found out by putting it in the center of the tank, but with a recommendation from Mike, putting it in the center on the side, it created that same tunnel without disturbing the substrate. So, and plus with that surface agitation, it helped oxygenate the water a lot better, which is overall better for the fish. It helps oxygenate the water. Yep. And also that was a great thing that we figured out by the placement, because normally every week when it's time to do filtered water changes, I had to go through and readjust all the substrate, and that gets old real fast, especially with all the big tanks that we have.
And that brings us to our next topic, and that topic being substrate. Like Will just finished saying, in his 150-gallon South American tank, he's got a very fine sand, and because he has a very fine sand, he has to strategically place his equipment in places. Well, what both of us found through trial and error, I know Will in his 250-gallon aquarium started with crushed shell. It looked great, it was a bright color, but when he started throwing South and Central American cichlids in there, because it was such a bright substrate, he didn't get the same color he was looking for out of his cichlids. So he decided to change that to a black substrate, a black sand substrate, and had a similar problem to what he had, because he also had a wave maker placed at the top and the bottom. And he had that same problem, one, with cichlids digging, and two, with kind of there being too much water movement and it was blowing the sand around. But what we found recently is it's a Caribsea brand of a very small pebble. And for that, what we found is the color is perfect if you want to get your cichlids to color up. And then it's a dense enough substrate to where it doesn't really matter where you place your wave maker, it's not going to move the substrate. It's also ideal if you've got sand sifters like Geos. It's a thin enough but thick enough sand that they can manage to eat through it. The other thing that we look at when we're choosing a substrate is the type of fish. Will had his 150-gallon peacock and hap. I've got my 210. He's got his Frontosa tank out there, and in all of them, his Ambuna aquarium is the only one of the African cichlids that we have that doesn't have that crushed shell substrate. But we choose that because for African cichlids who like harder water, just by adding the crushed shell as a substrate helps to boost the pH. Then over a period of time, obviously that pH is gonna, or the ability for that crushed shell is gonna dwindle. You want to start to add other ways of keeping and maintaining your pH for African cichlids. But anytime we're choosing a substrate, we always keep the fish and the stocking in mind. We've gone through several different types, and this last substrate that I just talked about so far has been our favorite for South and Central American cichlids.
And just to throw in there about the Ambuna tank, even though we don't have the crushed shell to help with the hardness, we have done other things such as added lace rock and the Texas Holy Rock. Yep. The lace rock especially helps boost the pH in place of having the crushed shell. So that's the things you have to think about. If you aren't going to use the crushed shell that's recommended or the substrate that's recommended for that type of fish.
Yeah, or
you have to find
ragonite
sand. You have to find other substitutes to make sure you're giving the fish the correct parameters that's going to help them thrive. So that's just one thing I wanted to make sure I throw that out there, that just because we didn't use the crushed shell, we still made sure to not chase the parameters, but ensure the parameters were set up correctly for the type of fish that we're housing.
Yeah, that's a fact. And the last thing we're going to talk about is lighting. Over the last 3 years, Will and I have gone through several different lights. And I know for me, just when I got into the hobby, I just wanted any type of LED light that I thought I could change the colors of and it would help the aquarium look better. So I went to Petco, picked up an Aquarium. I don't even remember the type of light it was, but went to Petco, picked up an Aquarium light, threw it on the aquarium, loved how it looked initially. But what I started to notice almost immediately was, for whatever reason, be it the power of the light, I'm not sure what it is, but with those Aquarium lights, I always developed that brown algae at the back of the aquarium. Whether it was my light cycle, if it was overfeeding the tank, these are all things that you do when you're new to the hobby. What I did notice is when I spent a little bit more money and went out and got the Fluval planted lights, that regardless of what I was doing in my fish keeping, I wasn't getting that brown algae. So what I equated that to was spending a little bit of money on quality lights. So from there, though, when you start with multiple tank syndrome and you're adding more and more aquariums to your home and all this stuff, money becomes an issue. So you want to start saving money where you can get it. That's why me and Will started to look around at other options outside of the Aquarium lights. Looked at some Night Crew. The Night Crew lights that they're on timers. They work very well. They're pretty inexpensive. I think about $70 a light. And so just going through trial and error, placing the lights on the aquarium where it benefits your aquarium most. Like I know for some of our aquariums that we picked up in Facebook Marketplace, we like to put the lights towards the center of the aquarium or the back because that helps kind of conceal and mask some of the scratch and wear and tear on the aquariums. If you've got a brand new aquarium or something that doesn't have a lot of blemishes on it, you put it right to the front of the aquarium. You can sort of mask the equipment that you have on the back, especially when you decide to paint the back of the aquarium. But these are all things that we learned over time, still playing with the lighting settings, still trying different lights. You look at some of the aquariums out there like Cichlid Bros and Caveman Aquatics that have some of the lights that create a nice shimmer. That's the word I was looking for. And then over here at Will's, he's got the Lomini lights, which are a pretty inexpensive option if you're looking for a light to create shimmer. He's got it on his Frontosa tank, and I think it came out very nice. I think, honestly, that might be something I'm looking at putting on the Red Terror Aquarium at my house. So just trial by error. What I have found, if I had to throw my favorite light out there right now, for me personally, with all the ones that we've currently experimented with, would be the Fluval 3.0. I just like how easy it is to use with my phone. I like that how the lights display, put them towards the front of the tank. I like how crisp they are, and then that I don't get any type of algae growth, and it allows me to create a good light cycle. So
yeah, so the one thing I'll add on top of with the lighting, it's not just about the type of light, it's also how you run your light. So like for us, what we found out and through trial and error is not running our lights for 7 to 10 hours a day. I know mine over here, I've just readjusted mine based off of some of the things pointers I picked up from Mike, as well as Caveman, Cichlid Bros, and a lot of the other fish tubers out there, is that I like to run mine. I found my sweet spot is 4 to no more than 5 hours a day. And ultimately, I just want to say thanks for watching. Remember that we are no experts. These are just some of the things we've experienced, and we wanted to share them just in case. You never know, somebody out there is dealing with some of the same things that we've experienced, and it just gives them something else to try. We just want to share and hope everybody's learning as we have learned. And just remember, as always, to hit that like and subscribe. And until next time.